Dylan's fingers stopped on the guitar strings. His voice cut midword, and he looked into the crowd at a face he hadn't seen in 20 years. The venue was small. Maybe 300 people. An old theater in Portland, Oregon, the kind of place with wooden floors that creaked and seats that had held audiences since before Dylan was born. October 1997. Not a stadium. Not an arena. Just a room where sound mattered and silence could be heard. Dylan was 2 songs into his set. The band behind him, drums, bass, guitar, playing that loose, rolling rhythm he'd carried for decades. The audience sat in near darkness, just faces catching occasional light, the way crowds always looked from a stage at night. He was singing, "Make You Feel My Love," a newer song. Simple. Direct. The kind of ballad that didn't need embellishment, just honesty delivered in that weathered voice that had carried a generation's worth of questions and stopped offering answers years ago. Second verse. His fingers on the guitar, finding the chords automatically, the way hands do after 50 years of playing. His eyes half closed, the way they always were when he sang, looking inward more than outward. And then he saw her. Third row. Center right. A woman maybe 60 years old. Gray hair. Weathered face. Both hands clasped to her chest like she was holding something precious, or trying to keep something from escaping. Dylan's fingers stopped moving. The chord died unfinished. His voice fell silent mid-phrase. The band kept playing for exactly 2 more beats before they realized something was wrong. The drummer's sticks lifted. The bass note faded. The guitarist's hand muted the strings. Silence. 300 people waiting. Dylan stood perfectly still, guitar hanging from his shoulder, one hand still touching the strings, the other fallen to his side. He was looking at that woman in the third row. Just looking. Not speaking. Not moving. Dylan didn't explain himself. He never did. The woman's face was frozen too. Her eyes wide. Her mouth slightly open. Recognition and something else, shock maybe. Or grief. Or the specific kind of pain that comes from seeing someone you thought you'd lost to time. Someone in the audience coughed. The sound seemed impossibly loud in the silence. Dylan's tour manager stood in the wings, one hand on his headset, frantically trying to understand what was happening. Technical issue? Medical emergency? Why had the music stopped? But Dylan wasn't sick. He wasn't confused. He was remembering. To understand what happened next, you need to understand what happened in 1969. Bob Dylan wasn't Bob Dylan then. Not in the way the world wanted him to be. He'd been Bob Dylan, voice of a generation, prophet of change, the one who knew the answers, and he'd walked away from it. Motorcycle accident in 1966. Retreat to Woodstock. Silence when everyone wanted him to speak. By 1969, he was trying to be something else. Anything else. A man with a family. A musician who could play music without carrying the weight of history on every note. He was recording in Nashville. The Nashville Skyline Sessions. Country music. Simple songs. People were confused. Angry, some of them. Where was the protest? Where was the rage? Where was the Bob Dylan who mattered? He didn't care. He was tired of mattering. There was a woman who worked at the recording studio. Not famous. Not a musician. Her name was Claire Whitmore. She was a secretary for Columbia Records' Nashville office. She scheduled session time, kept track of tapes, made sure musicians got paid. She was 26 years old. Quiet. The kind of person who existed in the background of other people's important work. Dylan noticed her because she was the only person in the building who didn't treat him like Bob Dylan. She didn't ask for autographs. Didn't want to talk about his old songs. Didn't have opinions about what he should be doing with his career. She just did her job and went home. One night, late session, Dylan was struggling with a song. The band had gone home. The producer had given up and left him alone in the studio. It was past midnight. Dylan sat on a stool with his guitar, playing the same verse over and over, unable to find whatever it was that would make the song work. Claire was still there, working late on paperwork in the front office. She heard him through the studio glass, playing that same verse again and again. She knocked quietly on the studio door. Dylan looked up, surprised anyone was still in the building. "I'm sorry to interrupt," she said, standing in the doorway. "But you keep stopping at the same place." "Yeah," Dylan said. "I can't find the next line." "Maybe it's not supposed to have a next line." Dylan stared at her. "Songs need to finish. Do they?" Claire stepped into the studio, tentative. "Or do we just think they do because we're afraid of silence?" Dylan didn't answer. Claire sat down in a chair near the door. "Play it again. The part you have." He did. One verse. Beautiful and simple and incomplete. When he stopped, Claire nodded. "That's enough. That's the whole song. You don't need to explain it. People will say it's unfinished. Let them." Dylan looked at her for a long moment. Then he smiled, a rare, genuine smile. "Who are you? Nobody important." "Most important people are." They talked until 4 in the morning. Not about music. Not about his career or his legacy or what he owed to anyone. They talked about ordinary things. Claire's small apartment. Her cat who slept in the laundry basket. Her parents who still lived in Kentucky and called every Sunday. Dylan talked about missing being nobody. About wanting to walk into a room and not have everyone stop and look and expect something. "You could do that," Claire said. "No. I can't." "Not anymore." "Then find people who forget. Who see you and don't see all the rest of it. You do that." "I'm good at forgetting important things," she said with a slight smile. They met 7 more times over the next 3 weeks. Always late at night after sessions. Always just talking. Dylan never touched her. Never suggested anything beyond conversation. He just needed someone who existed outside the weight of being Bob Dylan. On the last night of the Nashville sessions, Dylan gave her something. A piece of paper. Folded in half. Inside, he'd written the lyrics to that unfinished song, the one she told him to leave incomplete. At the bottom, in his slanted handwriting. "For Claire, who taught me that not everything needs an ending. I'll keep this," she said, holding the paper carefully. "Don't make it important. Too late." Dylan left Nashville the next morning. The album came out. People argued about whether it was brilliant or a betrayal. Dylan didn't explain himself. He never did. He never saw Claire Whitmore again. 20 years passed. Subscribe and leave a comment, because the most important part of this story is still unfolding. Dylan became older. Famous in a different way. Not a prophet anymore, just a man who'd survived being a prophet. He toured constantly. Small venues. Big venues. Didn't matter. He played because playing was what he did. Claire Whitmore stayed in Nashville. Never married. Worked for Columbia Records for 40 years. Retired in 1995 with a small pension and a lot of memories nobody asked about. She kept that piece of paper. Framed it. Hung it in her bedroom where no one else would see it. In October 1997, her sister called from Portland. "Come visit. You never travel. Just come for a week." Claire went. Her sister noticed the newspaper advertisement, Bob Dylan playing at the old Paramount Theater. "We should go." "You used to listen to him, didn't you?" "A long time ago." They bought tickets. 3rd row. Claire didn't expect Dylan to remember her. Why would he? She'd been nobody. A secretary. A woman he talked to a handful of times 3 decades ago. But she wanted to see him one more time. From a distance. Just to confirm that he was real. That those late-night conversations had actually happened. Away from the spotlight, Dylan made a choice no one expected. The silence stretched. 30 seconds. 40. The audience was getting uncomfortable. Whispers starting. Confusion spreading. Dylan stepped away from the microphone. He lifted the guitar strap over his head and handed the guitar to his bassist without looking, his eyes still locked on Claire in the third row. He walked to the edge of the stage. The venue manager moved toward the stairs, thinking Dylan was sick, ready to help him off stage. Dylan waved him away. "Claire?" Dylan's voice, without a microphone, just speaking into the silent theater. "Claire Whitmore?" The woman in the third row nodded, tears already streaming down her face. "I need you to come up here." The audience turned in their seats, trying to see who he was talking to. Claire didn't move. Couldn't move. Her sister beside her whispered urgently, "Go. He's talking to you. Go." Dylan waited. Finally, Claire stood, her legs shaking. She moved down the row, people pulling their knees aside to let her pass, everyone watching, no one understanding. She walked down the aisle toward the stage. Dylan crouched at the edge of the platform and extended his hand. She took it. He helped her onto the stage. Not roughly. Not urgently. Just the careful assistance of an old man helping another old person navigate a step that was higher than it should be. They stood facing each other. The audience completely silent now. The band frozen. The whole theater holding its breath. "I never finished it," Dylan said quietly, but in the silence his voice carried to every corner of the room. Claire understood immediately. "I know. You were right. It didn't need an ending. But you tried anyway, didn't you?" Dylan smiled that rare smile. "For 28 years. He turned to his bassist and took the guitar back. Slipped the strap over his shoulder. Adjusted it with the automatic movements of someone who'd done it 10,000 times. He looked at Claire. "I want to play it for you now. The way it was supposed to be. Unfinished. Bye. Just listen. Just breathe. Like you told me." What followed stayed with everyone who witnessed it, long after the sound faded. Dylan returned to the microphone. Claire stood beside him on the stage, not sure where to put her hands, settling finally for clasping them in front of her the way she had in the audience. Dylan played the song. Just one verse. The same verse he'd been stuck on in 1969. Beautiful and simple and incomplete. His voice rough with age now, but steady. Honest. He sang it directly to her. Not to the audience. Not to history. Just to this one woman who told him 3 decades ago that not everything needed an ending. When he reached the place where the song should continue and didn't, he stopped. Just stopped. Let the silence sit. The audience didn't know whether to applaud. This wasn't a performance. This was something else. Claire reached into her purse. Her hands were shaking so badly she almost couldn't manage the clasp. She pulled out a folded piece of paper. Old. Worn at the creases. She unfolded it carefully. The lyrics Dylan had written for her in 1969. "For Claire, who taught me that not everything needs an ending." She held it up so he could see it. Dylan's face crumpled. He turned away from the microphone, his shoulders shaking once, briefly. When he turned back, his eyes were wet. "You kept it. I told you I would." He nodded. Couldn't speak for a moment. Finally, "Thank you for teaching me how to stop." The audience erupted. Not polite applause. Something bigger. Standing ovation. Crying. Strangers grabbing each other. The specific kind of witnessing that happens when people see something true. Dylan helped Claire down from the stage. Walked her back to her seat himself, moving slowly through the crowd, shaking his head when people tried to touch him or speak to him. Just focused on getting this woman safely back to her place. When she sat down, he leaned close and whispered something no one else heard. Then he returned to the stage and finished his set. Regular songs. Regular performance. But everyone in that theater knew they'd seen something that transcended music. Share and subscribe. Some stories deserve to be remembered. The tour manager found Dylan after the show, confused and frustrated. "What was that? Who was she?" Dylan was packing his guitar. He didn't look up. Someone who taught me something I forgot. What? That silence is an answer too. 3 weeks later, Claire received a package. No return address. Inside was a vinyl record. Handwritten label. For Claire, the unfinished song 1969. It was Dylan's original studio recording from Nashville. The one-verse version. The song exactly as she told him to leave it. Unfinished. Perfect. She played it once. Then put it away in a drawer where it stayed for the rest of her life. Dylan never explained what happened that night in Portland. Interviewers asked. He changed the subject. That's what Dylan did. He didn't explain. But people who were in that theater still talk about it. The night Bob Dylan stopped a song because silence mattered more than finishing. The night he proved that some conversations don't end. They just wait.